Google and Samsung have been at each other's throats recently. Why? As we've seen, Samsung produces high-quality hardware that can hold its own against Google's, yet employs Android, which Google develops. This has brought tension between the two companies. So, could Samsung and Google be at war over hardware and software? This is what we think. Samsung has also been ahead of the curve when it comes to producing Android phones, using this edge to one-up competitors like Google, which creates the Android operating system. Meanwhile, Google has been working on its own hardware to compete with Samsung's. It's hard to tell whether the two companies really hate one another or are simply pretending to be friends as they compete while collaborating on a variety of mobile projects. Why Google and Samsung could be at war? Google and Samsung could be at war over the assumption that Samsung goes to great lengths to conceal the fact that it employs Google's Android operating system. It's absurd to think that way of Samsung, but look closely. Samsung has taken a stylistic turn in a new direction, with different color palettes and new programs installed on its smartphones. It would rather you use its calendar, web browser, and note-taking software than Google's. And to compete with Google where it can't, Samsung has partnered up with Microsoft. Samsung has strengthened these ties by favoring Microsoft Word over Google Docs, and by relying on Microsoft OneDrive rather than the more widespread Dropbox. Samsung went to great lengths to show how well its phones would operate with Microsoft's iCloud service, while Google was busy building its own game streaming network Stadia. Worst of all, Samsung hopped on Google's new smartwatch operating system for a time before declaring they would be creating their own S23 and basing all future watches on it. It's heartbreaking to see Samsung trying to distance itself from Google. Even if there are tensions between them behind the scenes, Android is what has brought Samsung and Google together in such a tight partnership. Nearly 80% of all smartphones on the market run on the OS, making it crucial to the growth of both companies. Google's Android operating system is free to Samsung and other manufacturers, and Samsung is the undisputed market leader in smartphones and tablets. Why would Apple and Google be at loggerheads, and what may be driving them? You'll come to know in a minute, so stay tuned. Do you know which Samsung product is making headways this year? Probably you don't know. Subscribe to our channel to stay connected with the newest Samsung devices and trends as they become available. The real reason for Google and Samsung's war. Current trends in the tech industry suggest that software and services will be the primary drivers of economic growth in the years to come. With a history as a hardware manufacturer, Samsung is capable of producing both high-quality screens and aesthetically pleasing devices, but they face a challenge in securing the company's long-term financial viability. Samsung's long-term goal is to become the go-to company for consumers in terms of health tracking, payment processing, and service bundling. In this regard, Samsung's biggest competitor is Google. The reason is when you own the operating system, you can effectively compel users to rely on your services. That's why Samsung's working with Microsoft. The two companies have the same goal of surpassing Google in the industry. Microsoft's battle with Google on the Windows front is well known. Microsoft Edge browser, Bing, and the complete Microsoft Office suite compete directly with Google's Office products. With mutually supportive missions, objectives, and Samsung's established leadership in the smartphone market, these two companies are not direct rivals. This makes it easier for the two to pick on Google. The dominance of Samsung at this moment is sufficient to force an immediate drop of 60% of Android's user base. If Samsung were to produce a popular operating system, it would draw hundreds of millions of users, taking them away from Google. This brings us to the question of the best next step. How likely will Samsung and Google put aside their disagreements and keep working together? Let's find out where the war could go from here. Future Samsung phones may not run Android, but rather a separate OS that has been under development at Google's research labs for some time. It's known as Fuchsia, and it was disclosed earlier this year that Samsung helped develop it. One story, however, suggests that Samsung has gone ahead and made the next logical step, ditching Android in favor of the more modern and capable Fuchsia OS. It's not Samsung's own idea to switch from Android OS to Fuchsia. Rather, it's a part of Google's larger plan to shift to a new platform. For its kernel, Fuchsia OS relies on a new programming language dubbed Zircon, in contrast to Android's OS usage of a modified Linux kernel. It may be used on a plethora of high-tech gadgets like watches, phones, tablets, and personal computers. As Nancy Pearcey puts it, competition is always a good thing. It forces us to do our best. A monopoly renders people complacent and satisfied with mediocrity. We don't know for sure that this is going to happen, but based on what we've seen thus far, this seems to be the most reasonable conclusion to draw. However, You know for sure if Samsung will go on with Google's Android OS by watching a video we made on the Samsung Galaxy S23 Ultra's leaked design. Find out what has changed. I hope you got a kick out of watching today's video. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in our next video.